Hi, this is Cheryl Harpel, founder of Gluten Free Friends, and I'm excited to sit down today with Valerie Kraft. When she was a student at Vanderbilt University, Valerie advocated for food allergy friendly dining. By the time Valerie graduated in 2021, Vanderbilt was recognized as having one of the top food allergy dining programs in the country. This advocacy experience inspired Valerie to work for Beyond Celiac after she graduated. She's now Director of Community Engagement and has since launched a College Ambassador Program to help other college students push for improvements. Valerie, thank you so much for meeting with us today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I was hoping you could just start us out by sharing your personal story and why you are passionate about this subject.
Of course. Well, obviously, I have celiac disease myself. My diagnosis took about 10 years, and it was a really rough journey getting there. My symptoms sort of changed over time, so we were always trying to hunt this specialty and that specialty and didn't realize that there was one underlying cause that kind of brought everything together. And unfortunately, a lot of that time I was getting brushed off as just being anxious, or maybe I was a teenage girl, it was that time of the month. And of course, and when I finally got that diagnosis, not only was it such a life-changing thing because nobody in my family had celiac disease, nobody in my family had a dietary restriction at all, that I now had to learn how to live my life at 15, kind of starting from scratch. But it was so frustrating to think that all it took was a blood test. Anytime, all of the doctors that I'd seen in that 10-year period, if one person would have just thought to test my blood, we could have done this much sooner. We could have saved me so much pain. And so I was really passionate about not just raising awareness for celiac disease, but really working to help kind of my demographic, which at the time was teenagers, because there was so much support for adults and so much support for young kids. And I couldn't really find anything in that middle area. Well, at the same time, because my diagnosis became August before my junior year of high school, that really dramatically changed my college search in ways that I just kind of kept learning over and over again, thinking that I had it down, and would go to a visit and be like, whoa, I didn't think to ask about that.
It's so typical, unfortunately, that people take, average, I think, is it 7 to 10 years, I think,
Mhm.
to get a proper diagnosis. So I'm glad that you finally got that answer. So why don't you talk a little bit about how having celiac influenced your college search? Like, well, how did it change how you approached looking at schools?
Yeah, in some ways it was tiered because I got this diagnosis and I thought, okay, surely by now it's 2015. Everybody knows what gluten-free is. Surely this won't be that hard, right? Right? And I went to my first college visit and I was so proud of myself because I'd thought to make an appointment with a dietitian and I thought to make an appointment with disability services. And I thought, look at me, I'm amazing. I've advocated for myself. And it was disastrous. It was complete, essentially, you can't eat anything and you're on your own. They quite literally pointed to a mini fridge in the corner that had like a few frozen meals and was like, that's what you eat. And that was a really big wake up call for me to realize, oh, oh, this is going to be a problem. This is not going to be every school knows what gluten free is because they know what gluten free is, but they did not know what celiac was. And those are not the same things. And
Right.
every visit I went to after that was kind of another step of learning. I was like, okay, I need to do a little bit more research before I fly out somewhere because I don't want to be blindsided. I'll have a phone call before I go. I had the phone call and I was so proud of myself for asking all the questions. And then I went out and realized that the answers that I got were not telling of the full story.
Right.
When they mentioned separate stations or when they mentioned different things, separate to me and separate of the reality was not so separate, unfortunately. And
Right.
so it really kind of took the learning process of having the conversations and realizing almost where dining was getting it wrong to realize what I needed them to do right. And I'm very thankful that I had at the very least some time under my belt from that diagnosis to starting college. I don't know what I would have done if it would have been senior year and I'd already narrowed things down, but it played a huge role. And I never want anyone to choose a college simply based off of where they can eat. but it is a factor to consider. And at the very least, it's a factor to know what you're getting into, because if you do pick a school that you can't eat at, you kind of need to know in advance what you'll need to do to get around that. Then unfortunately, you don't want to just show up on campus day one and be like, oh, I
Right.
needed to get an apartment and I don't have that.
Right, right. And it really does inform the accommodations you were going to need to request. So you went through your search and you chose Vanderbilt. You must have thought that they could feed you, assumed. And then what happened when you arrived to campus? Was it what you expected?
It was and it wasn't. And I'm very grateful because you do hear some horror stories about some baits and switches, and that was not the case at Vanderbilt. But how something works in theory and how something works in practice, it's not always the same thing. And something that sounded really good at the time, I now was realizing, oh, I'm a freshman. I'm ordered meals in advance. I don't actually know what time people I'm hanging out with right now are going to want to get dinner. And I've already ordered this meal for 6:30. The way it worked at Vanderbilt was that you pre-ordered your meals ahead of time and they made it for you separately. Of course, eating a buffet, that's not dedicated gluten-free. It's very difficult, if not somewhat impossible. So I was very grateful that I knew all of my meals were being made separately, safely, but it was some of the more logistical of how far in advance I was scheduling, or not necessarily knowing what I could and couldn't eat because the menu wasn't always labeled with all of the ingredients. So something that could be gluten-free, but also maybe could have a problematic ingredient, it was a little bit of a guessing game at times. And so although the system was there, and I was grateful that they had dedicated the time to putting the system in place, they also didn't have a full-time dietitian my first semester, so they didn't have anybody overseeing the program full-time. There were ways that it could improve, and in speaking with other students that were on the meal ordering program, I knew I wasn't the only one having those challenges. And my grandfather has always told me, you get more with honey than you do with vinegar. And I thought to myself, if I go in guns a blazing, this could be better and you're not this and you're not,
Right.
they're gonna it's not gonna get anywhere. And in having conversations with the chefs and the managers, and that was one of my favorite parts, was getting to have such a special relationship with members of the dining team that most students didn't have, just because they didn't really speak to them. I
Right.
realized that they didn't really know what celiac disease was outside of knowing what they needed to do in the kitchen. They knew that you can't share a fryer. They knew that you have to change your gloves. They knew that I couldn't have gluten. They didn't really know what celiac was because it's not a food allergy. It isn't the EpiPen, it isn't the peanut. And they didn't know it was an autoimmune disease. They didn't know it could have this many symptoms. And I kind of thought to myself, maybe the kind of key to solving this is getting people to understand what it really means, what
So,
this really is, that I'm not just somebody who's gluten-free for the
right.
fun of it. I'm not just somebody who's going to make you do all of this effort and then I'm going to go have a cheat day.
You found that in order to get people to care, you wanted them to understand what it meant to you personally, to be able to eat safely or not to be able to
I
eat
did,
safely.
and I would end up in front of all of the chefs and managers. It was a bit intimidating walking in to a meeting at 18, and it's like rows and rows of white coats and everything, and kind of sitting
Oh,
down. And
wait, step back. How did you get involved with talking to all these dining managers? Like, where did that begin? Like you
so
went realizing it
I
wasn't
went
working
up to
for you.
I kind of went up the food chain to the executive team. And I just was like, look, there's some things that can be better. I want to speak with you. The timing worked out well because that is around the time that we did end up bringing in a full-time dietitian. And that was kind of already in the works as I was
Okay.
having these kind of conversations and struggles. And she was somebody who was lovely and very passionate about food allergies and helping students eat safely and healthily. Um, and as I was really explaining my story to them and the struggles, they actually suggested it. They said, I think it would be beneficial for dining to hear this from you, for them to understand what
Oh,
it's like.
great.
So and that's, I will recognize an anomaly. I'm very grateful. The team at Vanderbilt are some of the most wonderful people that I've ever met in food service. I know that it takes the heart and the compassion and the willingness, and that's not something that every school and every student, unfortunately, is going to have. But I'm very grateful that they gave me that opportunity to be able to explain to folks what it means to have a celiac disease, that it's an autoimmune disorder, that again, I'm not on the gluten-free diet for fun, fad, weight
Right.
loss, whatever kind of stigma reasons are out there. And the other thing I did is they had already at Vanderbilt dining councils, and that was kind of for students to provide different feedback. And I suggested making one of students that had food allergies and celiac disease.
Right.
And so then I worked with the dietitian to connect with other students that were on the meal ordering program. And we started meeting once a month because I knew that for as much feedback as I was having on the gluten side, I couldn't speak to the dairy side or the peanut side or the soy side. And the issues that I were having was probably the same issues that they were having. And just fixing things for students with celiac disease, why not fix everything for everyone
Right. All
who has
together.
dietary restrictions?
So just to summarize a few of the things that you managed to do, you found allies at your school that cared and that you could work with to make things better. You joined with students with other food restrictions to create more of an audience and power base, really, to bring about the change that would help the most students. So Valerie, it sounds like things really changed between freshman year and by the time you graduated, because by June 2021, Vanderbilt was awarded the Overall Food Allergy Champion for universities by Menu Trinfo. I mean,
Yes.
tell us what it was like for you, like as a freshman, and then by the time you graduated, for the new group of kids that were coming into school.
You know, it was really full circle. I found out we won that award literally as I was sitting in my cap and gown waiting to walk to graduate. And that
Oh,
felt
wow.
like the most perfect full circle that I could have ever dreamed up for myself. You know, I'm so lucky that we were able to implement so much. And I realized that not all of that is going to be replicable on other campuses, but a lot of it is. Some of the things that made such a huge difference were things that didn't take so much time and effort and investment. Sometimes it was just being able to have the ingredient lists for all of the different dishes and to see, okay, is this something that I could request to be made, or no, there's too many things that have like wheat in this that it's gonna be too messy to try to supplement all of these out. That was really helpful. We also came up with kind of like a static list of things that you could order at any time, that it was kind of assumed that they would always have the ingredients for. So, you know, chicken, a burger, hot dog, omelet, salad, pizza, pasta, all of those things, even if they were not on kind of the rotating menu, it was helpful for other students to even have an idea of what they could order, because that was something I didn't have freshman year. I didn't know, do you have pizza? Do you have pasta? Do you have buns?
Right.
I didn't
There's
even,
transparency to the menu.
it sounds silly, but I didn't even know. We also just sort of put in different standard operating procedures, you know, being able to have sheets that printed out each order that the student would sign when they picked it up. It would have the chef's name on it, the manager's name on that. So we were able to kind of go back if there ever was a problem, or if maybe a student was repeatedly standing up meals, just to have responsibility on both ends, not just on the chef's ends, but on our students' end as well, making sure, you know, we didn't have students abusing the program. Some of the bigger things that really were a huge help is we moved from an email ordering system to, at first, a desktop and then a mobile app. So I was able to, as long as it was midnight before the day, and even sometimes if somebody forgot in the morning, you could get a last minute meal and you could send a text, but you know, trying of course to be respectful to the chefs, is I could go on my phone and click on the different stations, like check boxes, and check what I wanted to order at what time, at what location, and put any notes in the box. And that was linked to my account, which was linked to what my allergens and restrictions were. So
Wow.
it was not having to just sort of like send my email and was like, I hope some chef got that. We also, I think really my pride and joy was we opened a top 8 certified and gluten-free cafe in
Wow.
student center in the heart of campus.
Oh,
The,
wonderful.
the most ironic part of all of that is that space used to be the one pizza place that we had on campus.
Ah,
I was so nervous that people were going to get so mad about it. And it's one of our most popular spots on campus. And most people don't even realize that it's top 8 allergen free and gluten free. It's very natural. It's make your own saute and smoothie. And so you get to pick all of your vegetables, you get to pick your meat. For smoothies, of course, you get to pick your fruit. We have you know, we don't have regular milk, like we have a plant-based non-allergen milk, and all of our sides are things like tortilla chips or fruit. And so they're things that don't have any allergens or gluten, that don't seem like quote unquote replacement products. that has gone over really well.
So,
We ended up also taking out, and this is some of that kind of coalition building, we took out peanuts and tree nuts from our main dining halls. And though that was not something that affected me personally, I just sort of felt, here's another example of if we hadn't had this council, if we hadn't provided the opportunity for students who didn't have celiac disease, but because I had created this space for them to share their own concerns, here are changes that I'm making, not just for people like myself, but for people who are similar to myself and have to worry about the same kind of concerns that I do
right.
with what I eat.
It's interesting. The joy of those top 8 or top 9 plus gluten-free areas. I mean, if those are what your allergens are, you can like eat off your friends' trays, right? If you want to.
It was
That's
really nice
magical.
because, we always had to order your meal in advance, but for the first time, this opened my sophomore year, so I did really get to enjoy a lot of it. If I
Oh,
didn't know
great.
my schedule or if I didn't want to pick a time, I could walk up and order. I could just order. And that was like such a
So
novel and fun and
empowered.
exciting concept.
Right.
I didn't have to, ask for a manager, and I didn't have to explain. I could just order.
I've heard from dining leaders that like it's actually more relaxing for the staff too, because they're really careful and they're stressed about getting anyone sick, and it's a relaxed environment for them as well to serve students with food restrictions when they know that the allergens are not present in the dining halls. How do you feel about all those new freshmen heading to Vanderbilt and just walking into the improved dining that you've left behind?
It's so heartwarming. I led the council until I graduated, and I kind of passed the baton to, he was then a freshman with celiac disease, who is also now a senior with celiac disease and an ambassador for Beyond Celiac. And so it's really full circle, but I think it warmed my heart to my senior year, we would have allergy council meetings that would be like 5 minutes because nobody had any problems. There was nothing to report. And so I'd be like, okay, meeting adjourned. But it just made me so happy that people were like, I like the new pizza crust. And I was like, oh my gosh, we've done it. We've done it. That's all there is to say.
I
Um,
think Vanderbilt graduated with you. Vanderbilt dining graduated when you graduated in a
They
way.
they did, and that was always kind of my secret concern is what happens when I graduate. Is all this going to go away? But they actually just won that same award again this year in
Yay.
2023, and so it makes me so happy to know that not only does sort of my work live on in terms of the council, but for all of the students that come in, I see constantly in Facebook groups that people keep talking about Vanderbilt, and they're looking at Vanderbilt and their kids looking at Vanderbilt because they know that they're safe there.
Right.
And to know that I was able to provide that for future generations of college students is just everything.
It's wonderful. I
Can't
mean,
explain it.
I find that the student advocates that I work with, they're most motivated about helping other people. They don't want to fly under the radar. They'll go under the radar for themselves and try to make do. But when they realize that they're actually, when you advocate for change, it's not just for you, it's for all the people there and for all the people coming next. So, I mean, kudos for that. Do you think that schools that take this seriously, like Vanderbilt, I mean, they're not the only ones, but they're a wonderful role model, that really take care of students and meet the challenge of food allergies. Does it provide a competitive advantage? Do you think students are more likely to go there?
Great question. I think it does and it doesn't. It's so difficult in this day and age. And I'm not even that far removed from my own college application process, but it's so competitive to begin with when you think about the thousands and thousands of applications that colleges are getting. In some ways, although it is competitive, it does recruit students to be interested. They almost don't need more applicants because they already have enough interest in
Well,
some
honestly,
ways.
it would depend on the school. Like some schools are looking to increase their applicant pool, and I could see how this could set them apart, providing this type of level of dining.
I definitely think it can. And again, I know of so many people that they start in some senses their college search by looking at what schools do it well.
Right.
But I think if anything, and this is sort of my utopian vision, is I want schools to do it because it's the right thing to do.
It's the
And I
right
want them to do it because it's frankly what any person with food allergies or dietary restrictions deserve. They deserve to have a normal and a equivalent or equal experience to what their peers get. So although
It's
yes,
also the
I
law,
think it
according to
can, but I don't want it to be solely for that reasons. And I
right.
don't think it necessarily is because admissions and dining are two separate arms.
Right. But I mean, I was going to say that it also is, considered a food medically required food restrictions are considered a disability under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So schools do have this legal obligation, but until they recognize their sort of moral obligation, it's hard to get them to act as well as Vanderbilt did. And I think you did a wonderful job, just gently raising awareness and then pushing for change. Tell us how, when you graduated Vanderbilt, how did you wind up working at Beyond Celiac? How did that come to be? And tell us about your programs that you're working on there.
Of course. So I actually started with Beyond Celiac when I was still in college. When COVID hit, Beyond Celiac came out with their first ever summer internship program in the summer of 2020, because it was a virtual opportunity. And I was thrilled. I pounced on the application very quickly and was so excited that I got to work with some other students that summer. And we got to sort of rotate through the different departments at Beyond Celiac, provide different perspectives and outputs. And one thing that a group of interns and I did was pitch the idea of an ambassador program. It originated as actually just a college ambassador program, which since became a full-blown ambassador program for any age, not just limited to college. But when the summer ended, I was thrilled that they really took the program and ran with it. And I was brought back on during my senior year to be an intern, to kind of help really bring the program to life and start it from the ground up. And then when I graduated, I continued in kind of more of a fashion with Beyond Celiac, and then eventually was able to go full time. So it's been such an incredible and also a full circle experience. I really do feel so lucky that I've been able to kind of be in different positions to be helping people, whether that is at Vanderbilt or now at Beyond Celiac. And in a lot of ways, I designed the college ambassador program with myself in mind. There's so many times that so many people with celiac disease want to make a change. They want to be in their communities. They want to be doing more. And sometimes they just don't know the right path to do it, or sometimes they don't have the platform. One thing that I'm very grateful I didn't encounter at Vanderbilt, but I know other students struggle with, is being taken seriously as an authority on celiac disease. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a nutritionist, but I am a person with celiac disease, and I can tell you what my needs are. That doesn't mean that I'm any less incorrect or correct in what I say that I need just because of my age or because I don't have that background. And the ambassador program not only provides folks kind of with that platform and that backing, but it also connects them with us, where we're able to provide the tools, the resources, the training, the support to really work with each ambassador one-on-one to understand, what are your goals? What is the initiative that you want to be working on? For many of our college students, it is creating change on our campus, and sitting down with them to understand, okay, what is the current situation on campus? What are some different avenues that we can look into? What are some things that you've already tried? What are some obstacles? And what are some different paths that we can choose? As much as I would love every university to do what Vanderbilt did, I again recognize that's a huge anomaly and very much rooted in the fact that not only is Vanderbilt a self-op, they don't have kind of like an Aramark or another company, so they have kind of the freedom to make the changes. I also recognize that sort of willingness to jump is not necessarily something you're going to get at every school, and so kind of understanding, what can we do? What is realistic, and how can we work together to make this happen? And we have seen some successes, of course. Again, it's not going to be overnight, but we have a student who's been working at her university, who was able to kind of get a group together similar to like I did, and ended up meeting with the food service provider and has implemented a lot of changes on campus that have really helped with the safety and the number of options. We have another student that has kind of gotten herself in a position where her campus is currently building a new dining hall, and she's sort of actively providing them feedback before they even break ground to understand, how can we design this dining hall? Can we make room for a station? Can we make room for an allergy fridge? Before we have kind of the brick and mortar in place where it's unchangeable, what can we think of before there's
Right.
and this is the pizza oven, and everything around the pizza oven is going to be a little iffy because of all the flour. So it's a slow but steady process, but I think it's really, if it just starts with one person being willing to do it. And I think when you do it at one school,
Yes.
other schools realize it is possible.
I mean, your focus is on students with celiac, but I think all the advice that you've just given about how to advocate for change, you know, applies to students with food allergies or other medically required food restrictions too. I mean, how would you suggest if someone was trying to go about bringing about change who wasn't part of the college ambassador program? Like, do you have any tips for them?
Of course. I think one of the best places to start is whoever your contact is for food allergies at your university. Sometimes that's nutritionist, sometimes that is like a dining executive, sometimes that's somebody through the disability services office, but whoever kind of your liaison is the best place to start. If that person seems to sort of be the obstacle in question, then kind of looking to, is there somebody higher up? Maybe it is going to a dining manager, maybe it is going to dining executive, maybe it is going to the student services and asking for their help of how do you navigate when there's issues with kind of failure to provide proper accommodation. And I think as long as you go in and you are strong-willed but polite, when you advocate but you aren't rude, I think coming in with that tone is really is the way to go. We're here to educate, we're here to advocate, we're here to make a difference. I'm here to kind of like calmly list out to you what is
Right.
and what isn't working, and to be open and willing to work with them and to understand that they're not going to get it overnight. It may take some process, it may take some patience, it may take some repeating. Sometimes you might be like, how do you not? But they don't live with it. For somebody who
Right. And
doesn't live with celiac disease,
well,
it is a really hard ask for somebody who's not had to put themselves in your shoes to imagine what that's like. I couldn't have done it before my own diagnosis.
I think that the other thing that you managed to do, like you found your allies, like you said, so you're suggesting that they work up the chain until they find who they're, or even sideways. Sometimes it's sideways, sometimes it's up. Sometimes you find who manages the dining contracts, or you might find a professor who cares. You never know. So but then you also created a little community of students to help too, right? I mean, we've had some students just create Instagram groups within their campus for their gluten-free or students with food allergies, but creating a feedback loop for dining.
Mhm.
And you're creating a community that goes even beyond one school to, you can connect your ambassadors to other schools. And I mean, that leads into some of what we're trying to do at Gluten Free Friends with our survey initiative, where we're trying to get feedback from students about how well their colleges are meeting their dietary restrictions. And then we're posting it so everyone can see, anonymously, but they'll see candid feedback from students. And that sort of shines a light and raises awareness. And then students who are looking at schools can look at this information. And then also people can start seeing that it's not so hard. Look, some colleges can do it, just like Vanderbilt can do it. There's also, some, large public schools, small private schools, like a wide variety of students are filling out our surveys, and it's not consistent which ones have good dining programs, which ones aren't. But the thing that really is consistent is finding the people who care to bring about change. That brings me to thanking you and Beyond Celiac for adding our survey, our college dining survey, to your website, and helping us encourage students to complete it and give us feedback on their dining programs. Can you tell me why you thought that was an important thing to do?
Absolutely. I always tell students when they're looking at universities, if they can try to meet with a student in addition to dining services, it's so important, not necessarily just to sort of quote unquote fact check what you're being told, but there's aspects of having celiac disease on campus beyond just eating in the dining halls that dining services isn't going to be able to share with you about. It's about, hey, are there restaurants nearby campus that are well equipped to handle celiac disease? Are there grocery stores nearby? Are there any sort of convenience stores on campus? Ours both called Munchie Marts. Do those have anything gluten-free in them? Is it just a bag of potato chips, or are there, is there frozen meals? It's those sorts of questions. Or what about during orientation or special events when the dining halls are closed? What happens then? It's those sort of questions that go beyond just you walk in the dining hall and how do you eat, that having a student's feedback is so important for. And I think having the updated is really important. You know, one thing we always see is people asking for a list of what are colleges that do it well. Can I have a list? Can I have a list? And it's difficult because it can really change. Sometimes programs that are run well, you know, they miss a key person or someone leaves and now it's not run so well, or maybe someplace wasn't run so well and now they're run much better. And so having that accurate, up-to-date information is so important, especially since COVID-19.
Yes.
Anything that was sort of pre-COVID, it's like, well, is that still in place? Because COVID really changed how the landscape of a lot of dining programs worked. That was, as silly as it sounds, one of the first questions that I asked over the summer before I considered if I would go back to campus or not is, are you still going to feed allergy students? Because I know that, you know, we can't have dining services like kind of normal operations. So I think
Right,
it's
right.
really important to have that accurate, up-to-date feedback, but to understand not just the kind of bare bones of the dining hall, the other aspects that dining services just can't speak to.
Thank you, Valerie. Is there anything that you wished I asked you that I didn't that you'd like to add?
You know, I think I just kind of want to say to college students out there, I know it can be intimidating. Believe me, it very much was at times, but the worst thing anybody can tell you is no. That is the worst thing that can come out of asking for change. And the best thing is, who possibly knows? I laugh, but one of the best things that I think came out of my work is we ended up getting gluten-free cupcakes on campus. And let me tell you, during final seasons, it really did feel like a life changer. So never be afraid to advocate. Just like Cheryl said earlier, it's not just for you. It's for the other students on campus. And it's not just for other students with celiac disease. It's for anybody with a medical dietary restriction, for anybody that needs to have meals free of cross-contamination. And if it helps to think like that, it's really kind of countless how many people you could be helping. Um,
Thank
you
thank
have the power. You have the
Yeah,
power. That's
you
I
have
think
the
the best way
power.
to say it is you have the power, and the worst thing they can say is no. And so you might as well try, if not for yourself, then for others.
Well said, Valerie. Thank you so much for all of your efforts, both at Vanderbilt and now beyond, at Beyond Celiac.
Pun
So,
intended. I love it.
oh, thank you so much for joining
Of
me
course. Thank you
today,
for having us.
and we look forward to working with you a lot more in the future.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Take care. Bye-bye.